We are in Daf Mem Vav Amud Aleph. We saw the Mishnah yesterday. We saw machlokes between the Chachamim and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. The machlokes is very simple. Two partners are mudar hana from each other, are disavowed from each other, so that therefore Shimon can't get hana from Reuven, Reuven can't get hana from Shimon, and they jointly own a courtyard. So the halacha, according to the Chachamim, is neither of them is allowed to step onto the courtyard. They can't get benefit from each other, since every square inch is jointly owned. However, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and apparently this is the machlokes, is the issue of breira, like we talked about yesterday. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, no, each person can step onto the courtyard, and every step that Reuven takes is his portion and not Shimon's, and every step that Shimon takes is Shimon's portion and not Reuven's, using the principle of breira, that you can retroactively allocate the division of the field. Now, Ibayiluhu, the question is raised now. Now, in the Havamina, the Gemara is going to entertain the possibility that the Chachamim may also hold of the principle of breira, but in this case they're more machmir for the following reason. So Ibayilu, the question is raised. Benadru pligi, hidiru ze mai. So it seems from the language of the Gemara that they're arguing when each partner made his own personal vow. Reuven swore, I'm not going to benefit from Shimon, and Shimon swore, I'm not going to benefit from Reuven. And therefore the question is, what would happen if they were forsworn by each other? Where Shimon said to Reuven, you're not going to benefit from me, and Reuven said to Shimon, you're not going to benefit from me. In that situation, where the imposer of the vow was not the individual himself, what will be the halacha? Mi amrinan benadruhu depligi aval behidiru ze module rabbanon leRabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov dechi anusin damu. So on the one hand, you could argue as follows: maybe the Chachamim also hold of the principle of breira, but only in a situation where the person didn't put himself in the predicament to begin with. Maybe the reason why the Chachamim are machmir is not because they don't hold of breira, but rather because who told you to take a vow that would prohibit you from having benefit from Shimon Reuven? Reuven knew that the consequences were going to be that he couldn't benefit from Shimon, so what right does he now have to rely on breira to get around the neder that he himself made? Maybe that's the attitude of the Chachamim. But perhaps if the vow was imposed upon Reuven by Shimon, maybe the Chachamim would agree that Reuven can rely on the principle of breira to allow him to step on and benefit from the field or the courtyard. O dilma afilu behidiru ze pligi rabbanon. Or perhaps no. Maybe the rabbanon do not allow the principle of breira to be employed in either situation, either when the person himself made the neder, or even when it was imposed upon him by the other person. So Tashma, let's try and answer this question. Haya echad mehen mudar hana mechavero upligi rabbanon. So we know that there was another case in the Mishnah, the first case of the Mishnah where it was bilateral, where each one was prohibited from benefiting from the other partner. But the Mishnah also told us yesterday that what if only Shimon is mudar hana, is precluded from benefiting from Reuven's property? It seems over there the language is mudar hana mechavero. It seems from the language that Shimon is precluded because Reuven had taken a vow against him. And yet we still say that even though Shimon did not impose the vow upon himself, Shimon is precluded, according to the Chachamim, from benefiting from the courtyard. So that answers our question. According to the Chachamim, it makes no difference whether the prohibition was self-imposed or imposed by the other. In both cases, you cannot benefit from the courtyard. So the Gemara says no. Tani nadur mechavero hana. Maybe that's not the correct reading of the Mishnah. Maybe it's not mudar, but nadur. And really what it means is that Shimon imposed the vow upon himself. And maybe that's the reason why he cannot step onto the courtyard. So you have no raya because the language is ambiguous enough as far as how you read it to be able to read it either way. So the Gemara says it actually even makes sense to say that it's where Shimon imposed the vow upon himself and not that it was imposed by Reuven. Because remember, in that case of where it's unilateral, and the Chachamim say that Shimon is not allowed to benefit from the courtyard, but Ruvain is, because there's no vow against Ruvain, the vow is only against Shimon. What did we say? According to the Chachamim, we compel Shimon to sell his stake in the courtyard. Why? Remember, we talked about this yesterday, because of jealousy. Shimon and Ruvain jointly own a courtyard. Ruvain is basking in the courtyard because there's no prohibition against him. Shimon can't step foot onto the courtyard. He's going to look with contempt and jealousy at Ruvain, and it's going to tempt his Yetzer Hara to want to go and trespass on the courtyard. So we therefore say to Shimon, you have to sell your share so that you don't come to be nechshel in the neder. So Iyamart Bishlam Adonadar Hu Hana de Katani Kofen. Ela Iyamart da Adre Amai Kofen so Hamenas Anis. This imposition that we place on Shimon to sell his portion only makes sense if Shimon himself was the one who made the neder in the first place. Because since you, Shimon, made the neder in the first place, you got yourself into this predicament, so therefore we penalize you and we force you to sell off your portion. But if Reuven had made the neder against Shimon, and Shimon's a really nice guy, he didn't reciprocate, he didn't retaliate and place a ban on Reuven, so why should we now penalize him any further? He's already penalized that he can't use the courtyard that he owns 50%. You're going to force him to sell his controlling share? That doesn't seem fair. So therefore the Gemara says, we have no raya from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah could very well be talking about a case where Shimon swore himself, and that's the only reason why the Chachamim say that Shimon can't step foot on it. Or it could also be that the Chachamim Bichlal don't hold of the principle of Breira, and it makes no difference whether it was self-imposed neder or if it was imposed by the other partner. We have no resolution to this question, but one thing we do know for sure is that at least in the case where the person himself made the neder, he's not allowed to utilize the principle of Breira. Now, in a related discussion, we're now finished that discussion. Now let's go on to the next discussion. What kind of courtyard is it? Amar Rabba Amar Ze'eri Machlokes b'sheyesh ba kidei chaluka aval ein ba kidei chaluka divrei hakol mutar. So, according to this opinion, the only kind of field where there's a debate between the Chachamim and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is a courtyard that is divisible. Remember, we talked about yesterday that in order for a courtyard to be divisible according to halacha, when it's jointly owned, it has to be a minimum size. It has to be at least 4 by 8 amos, so that when you divide it, each person will have a 4 by 4 utilizable courtyard. Anything smaller than that is not considered to be utilizable, and therefore it's not divisible. Okay, so in that sense, but what this opinion is suggesting is the Chachamim and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov both hold of the principle of Breira. So when you have no choice, Kishe'ein Breira, when there's no choice, you're somech on Breira. You're somech on the principle of Breira. When you have no other choice, because the courtyard is not divisible, everyone agrees. Both the Chachamim and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov agree that each person, even though there's an outstanding vow against them, is allowed to rely on the principle of Breira, and both of them can step into the courtyard. When is there a machlokas between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov? Only when the field is so large that they could divide it. So the Chachamim's position is, why rely on Breira? Just divide the field, draw a line in the middle, down the middle, and that way you've divided the field, and you don't have to utilize the kula of Breira in order to allow each partner to walk onto the field. Just sever the partnership, dissolve the partnership, break the courtyard into 2 halves, and then you don't have to rely on Breira. That's the way this Amora is learning the machlokas. So Amar lei Rav Yosef, Harei beis hakneses de kemisha einbo kidei chaluka dami utanan shneim asurim bedaber shel osa ha'ir. He says, Rav Yosef says, how can you say that? You're telling me that everyone agrees when a property is indivisible that you can rely on Breira. But I'm going to show you, when we're going to learn in tomorrow's Mishnah, we're going to learn that if 2 people are mudar hana from each other, and there's a public utility that both of them have, in other words, the public owns this utility or facility, right? Let's say a shtibel, the village shul, where all of the members of the village are co-owners of the shul. Not like in a big city, but I'm talking about in a small town where everyone in the community contributed towards the building of the shul and everyone is considered a co-owner. So the halacha is, we're going to learn in tomorrow's Mishnah, that Reuven and Shimon can neither of them can step foot into the shtibel. Why? Because each one of them has a partial ownership of the shtibel. So now the question is, if you're telling me that everyone relies on breira when the property is indivisible, a shtibel is indivisible. Well, that's not always true. I mean, just talk to a few people. There's always a breakaway minion, right? But we're talking about a one-room shtibel, right? We're talking about a one-room shtibel, and the way it's supposed to be is that you don't divide up a Beis HaKnesses. There's what's a one-room Beis HaKnesses. It's not divisible, and yet we still say that according to the Chachamim, you don't say breira. So you can't tell me what you just said, that when a property is indivisible, you rely on breira, according to the Chachamim. So therefore, Ella Amar Rav Yosef Amar Ze'eri Machlokas she'ein ba kedei chaluka, aval yesh ba kedei chaluka divrei hakol aser. And this is what we had spoken out yesterday from the Ran, is that really, says Rav Yosef in the name of Ze'eri, that the Machlokas, the Chachamim and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, is only when the field is indivisible. Because there, the Chachamim say, we don't rely on breira ever. And Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, when there's no breira, you rely on breira. In other words, when there's no other choice, rely on the principle of breira, right? But when the courtyard is divisible, then even Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says you can't rely on breira. Breira is only a fallback position, according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, when there's no other option. But if you have the option of dissolving the partnership and dividing the field down the line, down the middle, then that's what you should do, even according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So, Omer Rav Huna halacha Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, Chen Omer Rabbi Elazar halacha Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. And so these Amoraim say in the final analysis, and we know that from other Gemaras that the teaching of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is kav v'naki. It is considered to be the most authoritative because he was the most lucid in his learning, and therefore this is no exception to the rule. Now, Hamuder Haname Chaver v'yesh lo sham merchatz v'chuli. Now we have another interesting Gemara. We had seen yesterday that if Reuven owns a property or owns a facility and Shimon is not allowed to get hana from Reuven, but Reuven leases out this facility. He owns a bathhouse and he leases it out to an operating tenant. So Levi is running the bathhouse or Levi is running the olive press. So the halacha is that it depends, can Shimon get benefit from the bathhouse or not? It depends. If Reuven has a controlling share of the bathhouse, so then Shimon cannot get benefit from it. But if Reuven has already abdicated all of his controlling share in the bathhouse, then it's permitted for Shimon to benefit from the bathhouse. So the question is, what is considered to be a controlling share? That's the question of this short Gemara. The Gemara says, V'kama tfisas yad. What is a controlling share? Amar Rav Nachman lemechza lishlish v'lerevia, aval bebatzir lo. So Rav Nachman says, we're talking about a situation where Reuven is getting like a sharecropper's entitlement. Levi is like a sharecropper. He is not paying any rent, but what he's doing is he's the operating manager of the facility, and he pays a percentage of profit to Reuven. So Reuven gets either 50% or 33% or 25% of the profits. But anything less than that, where Reuven does not get a percentage of the profits, that's not considered to be having a controlling share. Now, the Rishonim on the daf change the word. It's not bibatzir, but rather bibeitzim or bibeitzin. And what does this mean? So this is a very interesting analysis that both the Rosh, Rashi, and the Ran will give over here. That if you have to, what the Gemara really means, according to them, with the girsa of bibeitzim, is that you actually have to have a controlling share in the primary business of the bathhouse. But let's say the bathhouse has a side business. In other words, what's the main business of a bathhouse? To let people come in and they pay for taking a bath. But there are other functions to a bathhouse. A bathhouse is hot and it's humid. So there was a practice for potters to bring their clay pottery into the bathhouse, and the word beitzah is a clump of clay. And they would bring their clay into the bathhouse because the heat and the humidity would let it properly slowly dry. That's the way it seems to be. I don't know exactly the way it works, but that's the way. So you could make a side business, but when you owned a bathhouse, you'd have a separate corner for people who would bring their pottery into the bathhouse. If, let's say, Levi, the tenant, is running the whole bathing business, and Reuven only takes on the side business of the pottery business, so then that's not considered to be a controlling portion in the bathhouse, and Shimon can come in and take a bath. That's one way of understanding it. That's what Beitzim means. The Ran says that Beitzim means real eggs, because people would bring, sometimes you would sell eggs. When you'd go to the bathhouse, your wife would say, oh, you're going to take a bath, pick up a dozen eggs. Now, normally we don't associate picking up eggs going to the Schwitz or going to the bathhouse. What's the connection? I didn't know. I thought you'd go to Sobeys to buy eggs. But someone suggested to me that, again, it's hot and it's humid. It's a good incubation. It's like a hothouse where if you want to have eggs to be able to hatch your chicks and make for whatever, so you'd bring them to the bathhouse. So that, again, it's a side business, and therefore it's not considered to be a stake in the primary business of taking a bath. Shimon can come and take a bath. Okay, fine. So Abaya Amar afilu bibatzir or afilu bibeitzim asur. Abaya disagrees. He says even if you have less than a controlling portion of a profit-sharing business, or even if Reuven is running the side business in the bathhouse, it's still asur for Shimon to take a bath there, because Reuven is still considered to be a partial owner of the active business that's going on in the bathhouse. Okay, but heichi dami the shari the makabel betaska. So what would be for Abaya? So then what taka is a situation where Reuven is the owner of the facility, but since Levi is the full tenant, we say that Shimon can take a bath there, or because Shimon can press his olives there if it's an olive press. And the answer is the makabel betaska. So there are two explanations from the Rishonim. One explanation is that taska means tax, and here it means property tax. That if Reuven relinquishes his operating or ownership share of the facility so much that he basically puts Shimon in charge of everything, of every expense of the facility, to the point where Shimon even accepts upon himself to pay the property tax on the facility, so then Levi is considered to be the sole owner because of his net tenancy. I think it's called
triple net.
Triple net.
Triple net is when the landlord has no responsibility.
The landlord has no responsibility, and basically he says, you take over all expenses of the building. You pay the taxes, you pay repairs, you do whatever you need to do. So that's what Taska means, according, I think, to the Rush, or one of the Rishonim. The Ran says that's not what Taska means. The Ran says that Taska means that Levi, who's the tenant, pays a fixed rental amount every year. And so Reuven has nothing to do with any profit sharing whatsoever. He gets nothing from the profits of the bathhouse. He gets nothing from the profits of the side business. And basically Shimon pays a flat fee. He can make a lot, he can make a little. It makes no difference in the rental amount. That's what the word taska means. So in that situation where Levi is sort of like the full operating, for all intensive purposes, he's the owner of the business for that period of time, then Shimon is allowed to take a bath in the bathhouse or press his olives there. So that's the way Abaya would look at it. And we'll just do one more quick Gemara. Ha'omer lechavero v'chulei. We had learned this before in a Gemara, but basically the Mishnah had distinguished between, in the phraseology, the way what kind of verbiage you use. If you say, you're not going to benefit from my house, so then it's only usher for Shimon to benefit from Reuven's house as long as Reuven is the owner. But if Reuven gives it away as a gift, or if Reuven dies and his children inherit it, then it's now permitted for Shimon to go into the house, because it's no longer Reuven's house. But if Reuven says, you're not going to benefit from this house, right? Or if Shimon says, I'm not going to benefit from this house, so then it doesn't matter that it's Reuven's house or anyone else's house. Shimon made the subject of the vow the house itself, regardless of who's the owner, and therefore Shimon cannot enter into the house even after Reuven sells the house or dies. So Avimi asks a related question. So our Mishnah was talking about where Shimon is the one who takes a vow. He says, I'm not going into the house, or I'm not going into your house. And that's where the distinction is made. What about if Reuven is the one who takes the neder against Shimon, and he says to Shimon, you're not going into this house. ever again. Now, what happens if Reuven dies? And the house then goes to Reuven's children, or Reuven sells the house. What's going to be the halacha? Do we say Adam Oser Davar Shebirshus L'Chishiyetzim Yershus? Hello, the Gemara had asked this question before. Do we say that a person can aser something that is currently owned by him, such that even after it leaves his ownership, it remains permanently aser from the koach of the neder? Or do we say that once it leaves his ownership, the neder also flies off the object? So Amar Rava Tashma. So come and listen. Ha'omer livno konem she'iatanena li umeis yirshenu. That if a man says, the Brisa says that if a man says to his son, I hereby take a vow that you're not going to benefit from my property, so then during the father's lifetime the son cannot benefit from his estate. But once the father dies and it's no longer the father's property anymore because it now reverts to the children, the son is allowed to inherit his portion of the estate because it's not the father's anymore. However, b'chayai uvemosi umeis lo yirshenu. However, what if the father made the vow in the following phrase? He says, you're not going to benefit from my estate both while I'm living and after I die. So then in that situation, the son cannot inherit the father because the father has asered the estate regardless of his ownership of it. So Shma Mina, Adam Oser Davar Shebirshus L'Chishiyetzim Yershus, Shma Mina. So we see conclusively from here that a person does have the ability to prohibit something even after it leaves his possession. Now, we had this discussion before, and we had seen that this is the subject of a machlokes. And what the Gemara had concluded after bringing this story is that the only time there's a machlokes is when you're non-explicit. If, let's say, a person says, I hereby aser this house upon you, and you don't say explicitly, both while it's in my possession and after it leaves my possession, there is a man da'amar who says that since you didn't explicate it, the house will still be mutter to Shimon after you get rid of it, after it's no longer yours. However, if you explicate it, that's really what we're deriving from this Gemara, from this Brisa. If you say explicitly that you will not benefit from this house ever again, both while I'm the owner and even after I relinquish ownership of it, then it is within a person's ability to do that, as long as it's stated explicitly, and that seems to be beferish in the Brisa. Questions?
How can a person have the koach to make a neder on something he no longer owns?
Because when he made the neder is chal on a chayfetz. The neder is chal on an object. And so because I'm the owner of that object, while the neder is chal, the neder is like a hektish status. It remains permanently on the object until it is lifted in some way. It cannot be lifted just because the ownership has changed. Just like a declaration of hektish cannot be lifted just because the ownership changes.